This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Catherine Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here will focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. Whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Catherine Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so honored you're here. Hey, y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here. We have continued to have such great guests. And I was thinking, what's the one unifying factor for every NICU parent? And I think I found it. We all give birth to our babies. Either your partner is supporting you through that, or you are the mama and you are the one delivering the baby. And while the delivery mode can change, it could be a planned or an emergency C-section, it could be a VBAC or a vaginal delivery. There are a lot of different ways that babies come into the world, but indeed they come into the world. And I thought that visiting with a nurse who loved being a labor and delivery nurse would be such an excellent guest with such great perspective that I think could visit about some of the grief that comes along with having a delivery that maybe did not go the way that you thought it was going to go, and perhaps could even be traumatic, as well as what are some things that you can do beforehand to ensure or to at least strive to have best possible birth in your particular situation. So I found her, y'all. She's great. She's known as the labor mama on social media, but Lo Mansfield is a specialty certified registered nurse in obstetrics, postpartum, and fetal monitoring. And she is passionate about families understanding their integral role in their own stories. She's tired of you being told what to do or what is, quote, best, and instead believes you should get all the information and then be supported and cheered for as you make up your own mind. She's the owner of the Labor Mama and the creator of Your Body, Your Birth courses. She's also a mom to 3, 6, 4, and 2, and a wife to Kelvin. She's a freelance writer and a mashed potato enthusiast. So with that, let's chat. Well, I'm excited to have the Labor Mama, as some of you may know her on social media, but Lo Mansfield, registered nurse. She is an amazing resource, I think, for the people that follow her on social media, and I'm sure the people that have taken her courses. But today I just wanted to dive in. I always think it's good because typically people that I interview are passionate about the things that they do and the work that they do. So I think it's probably appropriate to ask, why nursing and why labor and delivery? Why did you choose that path?
Yeah, it's like an easy answer, but also a little convoluted. I actually got a business degree first. So went to school, got a business degree, wanted to be pre-med, realized that was just like, I'm a first generation college student. So I was just kind of over my head with all of the college stuff. So switched to business, got a business degree. My parents were driving me home from graduation. And I said, you know what? I think I want to be a nurse. And the reason that I had said that and why that had come up is because during college, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. And so our family, and it was significant enough that it needed, radiation, chemo, the whole thing. And so our family was just cared for really well by healthcare providers. She was loved really well by providers. I am from a small town, so I think that makes a difference sometimes, but I just spent so much time with her, or then getting infusions. And I just was like, I want to be one of these people. Like, this is incredible the way they just care for people. And so it wasn't a huge surprise to my parents. They kind of were like, of course you do. Like, that's probably exactly what you're called to. And so went back to school, became a nurse. When I graduated, I wanted to do oncology or like pediatrics, LD, or labor, delivery, recovery, postpartum. And obviously the oncology thing was pretty impacted by my mother. But I really think with both of them, I just love the holistic, like, family is so involved in those experiences. And I know that family is always involved, typically when someone's in the hospital, but beginning of life, there's always family, grandparents, siblings, which can make it hard, but also is really cool and really special. And not that chemo and cancer is always end of life, but typically there's just a significant amount of family and love and other people involved in those scenarios too. So I really like that, like, whole, you kind of get to take care of more than just the patient. And I think that's really cool. So mom, baby, dad, grandparents, And then alternatively, like in my story with my mom, it was mom, all her daughters, her husband. So I just thought that was really special. So I got lucky as a new grad, got an LDRP job right away. So labor, delivery, recovery, postpartum. So got to do all of it. And here we are.
No, I love that you continue to do the thing that you love. I think a lot of people sometimes settle, and I think that our life experiences sometimes inform and also kind of redirect our life. And I love that you were obedient to that. That I'm sure you would have been excellent at business, but I'm sure you're still using some of that. But I love that you're using that gift
Now.
for new moms. Yeah. So on your website and all the other things that you share, you talk about, so you balance three things: balancing intuition, grace, and evidence. What does that mean in relation to the birth process? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I just think there's been this really interesting swing right now towards moms and families being really educated before they go into birth, which is wonderful. But I feel like in the process, what we've done is we are saying this is right and this is best. And we throw this information and we tell people what is right for them or right for their babies. And we stop telling them that their intuition matters. And I think, especially for NICU mamas, it can be hard to trust maybe how you're feeling or what you are thinking related to what's going on with your baby, or even just the ability to say like, hey, can I do skin to skin? Like maybe that would really help right now, or that's something that I think we could both really benefit from. And so I just think we are doing a poor job in some regards of saying, here's all this information. We want you to know it and make really good choices, because maybe our moms and our grandmas didn't have that, but your intuition really matters. And so that's my whole evidence thing. I love to present evidence-based practice, but I almost always go, this is the evidence, and I trust you now to go do what you want with it. You are capable of making those choices. And so that then for me is also where the grace comes in, of one, as an educator, saying, absolutely, like I'm going to extend grace to you as you make different choices. And then mom to mom going, you're going to interpret evidence and stuff differently because your intuitions are different as well. You care about different things. That's allowed. And so I think we need the grace to understand each other's differences. And I think we need the evidence to have foundation to make decisions. And then I think we really have to get back to, or continue to lean into, trusting ourselves too, and not just like pouring ourselves towards what the book says, our favorite influencer, our favorite author.
I think that's beautifully said. I mean, I think as a NICU mom, sometimes we doubt our intuition because we're bombarded with a lot of things. So I'm glad that
Huh.
you told moms, don't discount your intuition. At the very least, name it, share it with people as you start to make decisions. I think it can make a huge difference. So you mentioned earlier about your mom. I think you've been really honest that you lost your mom when you were pregnant with your first baby. I think it's been said before that every NICU experience is filled with grief. There's a loss of either a baby, there may be a loss of just a normal delivery or a normal experience. So we all experience, while it's a different kind of grief, but certainly a loss of something in that process of staying in the NICU, of having a NICU or a preemie baby. Lo, what were some things, or how did you navigate that grief, yours being your mom, um, through that experience? How did that impact you, and how do you navigate through that as you sort of find this new normal that you find yourself in?
Yeah. So my mom actually passed away a couple months after my daughter was born, but I feel like my entire pregnancy was just chock full of grief. So she had been sick. She was in the ICU the day I told her I was pregnant. So really from the moment I told my mom about this next chapter, it was wrapped up in her being sick and eventually her dying. And it was my first pregnancy too, right? And so while I think pregnancies and postpartums and experiences can be redemptive, there is something to be said for what happens that first time you walk through something, because it becomes all that you know until you know something different.
This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app, join one of our support groups, or find one-to-one support, enjoy counseling, find loss and bereavement support, participate in a peer-to-peer mentor program, or check out our news, articles, and family stories at handtohold.org. All of that is at no cost to you. Hand to Hold's mission is to provide personalized support before, during, and after a NICU stay to help ensure that all NICU families thrive. So, Lo, I know that there's some moms when they deliver their baby, it can be the circumstances. It could be an emergency C-section or something different. And there's a lot of time that passes between when they deliver their baby and when they see their baby. And so some of them may feel very disconnected from their baby. I guess I want to know, is it normal to feel that? And how do you manage and navigate through that when you carry this guilt that maybe your body didn't do that it was what it was supposed to do, and now you feel like you've lost this relationship with your baby?
Yeah, absolutely. So 100% normal. That feeling of just not fully knowing and recognizing that little baby can be felt in a NICU experience or a traumatic experience, or even in like regular birth as well. And I think it's important that we keep saying like, hey, not every mom's head over heels. I'm so in love with you the moment a baby comes out. There are different reasons that we don't respond that way. And they aren't bad and they don't indicate anything negative. And then, of course, with NICU specifically, there's physical separation. So it's a very normal response to not feel, I don't want to say all in, you're their mama, but to feel that like instant head over heels feeling. And if you go on to have more kiddos, I think it's important to say, hey, it might take you some time to get to know them too. So just in general, 100%, it is very normal. And there's no indication of anything wrong if you feel some detachment, be that NICU or even after a, normal birth. My favorite thing to think about, and this is kind of sciencey, in regards to this kind of detachment and is that okay, is the idea that physiologically your baby is just 100% enamored with you. And so we see things in science like your voice, your touch, when they get to be skin to skin, even when you're just near them, like their respirations, their heart rate, all of their vital signs respond in this really positive, beautiful way. And so I think even if as mom, you're like, oh, I'm not like, you feel unfamiliar, I feel uncertain, I'm not sure why I feel this way. Like if we could see what our babies see or hear what they're saying, if they could speak to us, I think you would hear them say like, I'm all in, mom. Like I'm obsessed with you. You're exactly who I need. Just all of this stuff that really is proven by science. And so if your heart or your emotions or your head feel a little messy, like rest in the fact that your baby has just total clarity about you being the one and being in love with you and that you being exactly who they need. And so I like that little bit. It's easy to say. It's not always as easy to feel, but it is very true. And then in regards to tangible, like things you can do, get involved in their care, do, we call them like activities of daily living or their daily cares, whatever you can do, change a diaper, sit near them if they're in those isolates or I know that you can't always do skin to skin, but again, your voice, your touch, your nearness, they know that, they know you. And so being near to them when you can is actually really powerful and just creating human connection, just like a nurse makes me think of me, like I love like actually touching another human being because it creates this tether, this type of care and love, affection. It's different between a nurse and a patient, but for you and your baby, like it's only going to continue to build that foundation of love and care that you have for them. So being involved in their care as much as you're able, skin to skin, of course, as soon as you're able, your partner can do it as well, as much as you're able, as long as you're able. Doing skin to skin with them is going to, sciencey again, but release oxytocin, bonding, all of this stuff. And it's just, often it just feels right to both of you once you get that time together. And then lastly, find those moms who have been there, who can look you in the eye and say, yep, 100% normal. Tell me what else you feel. And just not throwing solutions and not trying to tell you like, here's what you can do to change, but really just saying, yep, normal. And then kind of can walk with you through really that kind of roller coaster until you, I don't want to say get to where you need to be, but like get to the place where you are not kind of doubting that attachment anymore.
No, I'm pretty sure that there's a mom listening, one that needed to hear that their baby is already in love with them. Um, it's an unconditional, good kind of love. They already know, like you said, your voice and your touch and all those things. So it's nice to know that even if it takes moms a little bit to catch up to that, it's going to happen, and that there are lots of things that your baby, lots of cues that they're going to give you, that they're just patient with you. Praise the Lord for that. Um, so, Lo, what's the best way that you can communicate with your labor and delivery nurse, and maybe your doctor too, but your labor and delivery nurse about what your expectations are when you get ready to deliver? Because some moms may know that they're going into the NICU, and some moms may not know until later. So maybe kind of focus on those moms who may know that they have a NICU stay and they're maybe hesitant to share like their desires with their labor and delivery nurse.
Yeah. Yeah. So my hope would be that ideally you've talked prenatally with your provider. And so they really can give you the like lay of the land, right? Like, oh, our nurses are so used to this request, or like, please don't feel bad about, saying XYZ, speaking up, etc. I know a lot of times providers sometimes had gotten a birth plan and it was in the patient's chart and they'd like have a little note on it or say like, you know, totally fine if a patient doesn't have IV or whatever it is. Typically in a high risk situation, you have to have an IV, but just in general, there's some communication that happens like in the background sometimes. So walk in, just, I would say, assuming that your nurse knows what your provider is on board with and good with, and also being totally comfortable telling them. You're not bothering them. You're not bugging us. I'm not annoyed that you're reminding me of something that matters to you. And if you get that vibe, well, honestly, ask for a different nurse. Like, this is an important day for you. And it's kind of annoying to even think you might have to advocate for yourself in that way. But this is our job, is to come around you and to say, hey, what do you need? And how can I make that happen? Within
Can
whatever
you do
bounds.
that, Lo? Can you, like,
Yeah,
if you're in an L&D situation, can you ask for a different nurse?
you can. Yeah. As a side note, but typically, so staffing and all of that is a very real thing. You can't just
Sure.
like have what you want.
Right.
It's really important for staying postpartum as well. Like, if you really don't love someone you have the first night and you're staying 2 more nights, just tell the next nurse the next morning, hey, I didn't love her. Would it be okay if I don't have her back tonight? And typically, and the same for days. If you really don't love who you have and it's like not going to work, you could speak up. You could mention it to someone else. You could mention it to your midwife or your doctor when they swing by. Obviously, that's a little sticky because you're not going to tell your nurse, hey, I don't like you. Can have someone else usually. But yeah, totally okay. We had patients do that a lot. A lot of us work in like 3 or 4 shifts in a row. So then we can have like 2 days off. And so it's common to have someone multiple shifts in a row, or we'll say, hey, can I have her back? I loved her yesterday. But if you're not feeling the same thing or something's going on,
Sure.
it's, yeah, totally okay to say so. And then
No,
can they always on?
I think I remember one time we had a nurse, and I remember looking at my husband and I said, I don't know if this is a good fit. What do you think? And like, I got some like affirmation, like, do you think? And he said, yeah, I think in that case. And then there was another time and he said, I think you just need to maybe get some rest. I don't think it was her. I think it was you.
Me too.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So, in general, like, if you don't really feel like they're your advocate, then one, I would speak up more, because maybe it's because you just haven't really shared. And so we're just working off of the basics, or what we know. Like, we don't fully know who you are or what really matters to you. Or maybe you just aren't meshing and you can try to deal with that.
sure.
The other thing I
No,
love
that's good advice.
The other thing I love for patients is this idea of like priorities versus my plan. And so if you can say like, hey, my plan's in the chart, have you looked at it, whatever. And you can flip. I usually would, like, if I was admitting them, we're like going through it together. And if I noticed anything that wasn't normal or like different, then it'd be like, oh, hey, let's talk about this. But I like the idea of saying, hey, this matters to me like more than anything else. So like, can you be on my team? Can you help me get after that? And then everything else, like, well, I can pivot, I can move, I can change, but like, I really want this. So if the patient was able to prioritize in that way and tell me that, like, typically then even with a provider, I could say like, hey, could we do this first? Because that means like, we really probably will get to do XYZ, or she really wants this type of delivery. So she's cool with doing the epidural because that means she's going to get, vaginal delivery. Those are big picture things. But just that idea of having an ultimate goal, sharing that with your nurse so she can really help you get to that one big thing, even if other things shift a little bit.
No, it's a really intimate relationship with your nurse, or the ones that spend the most time with you. The doctor always
Yeah.
comes in for the big reveal, but I do remember this really beautiful experience that I had. I don't want to minimize the doctor's role; it's very important, but the nurse to patient role is a very intimate, really special one. We we still send Christmas cards to some of our nurses, so I know
Yeah.
that there's a really special thing there. So, what do you think the best thing is for a mom to do? Maybe when she is feeling really anxious in that delivery, maybe I'll give you an example. When I was pregnant with our fifth baby, who was our NICU baby, I thought that we were going to deliver naturally, and about 30 minutes before we really had to make a decision, my doctor came in and said, Catherine, I think we're going to have to do an emergency C-section. And I kind of freaked out because I had only delivered babies, vaginally. I had never done a
Yeah.
C-section before, the normal way, I guess. And I really kind of freaked out because not only did I know that we were going to be in the NICU, but now everything that I had thought, and really the thing that I had never considered was happening. Um, I'm not going to tell you what I did, but I would love to know what it was that you would suggest, and then I'll see if I did it the right way.
Yeah. So are you saying like in that moment of things changing,
Yes.
what would my suggestion
Yeah, I think
be?
I think I think moms, maybe it's that particular situation, but they may have a moment of panic, like this absolute, like everything's going south, and I'm freaking out. What can I control? What can I not control? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think that what you just said is actually the really important question to ask yourself is like, what can I control and what can I not? Because even just getting your hands on like a little bit of something can help you kind of like take some of that power back. It makes me think of like a gentle cesarean. So if you know what those are, there's different things that you can do or ask for during cesarean birth that take it from a surgical procedure to more tries to kind of like imbue it with more of a vaginal delivery. So like even in that specific moment, you could ask about specific music that could be played in the OR. You could ask, hey, like I know this, we're moving quickly, or sometimes you're not, but it just becomes necessary. Would it be okay if everyone like not, quote unquote, do shop talk? And if we can just like with my husband and I or my partner, I can just listen to our music. Just certain things that you can do to still say, like, I'm not getting the birth I wanted, but I got to ask for some of the things still. And so, barring like that really emergent situation where something happens really quickly, and in those situations, I would still give you the advice find a point person. And so, in a perfect world, there's a nurse or there's someone who is not frantically or busy doing something, but they are in your ear saying, we're doing this. We're going to go ahead and put in a catheter and then we're going to roll you to the OR. This sounds weird, but I have really intimate memories of being that person in some like crash situations. And I remember these moms and I remember just telling them what everybody was doing. And so if you have the freedom or your partner does to say like, hey, can someone stand here and just explain to us what's going on? I really think that's so helpful because otherwise everything's happening around you. And that
Right.
is a very scary place. And it's like so noisy, but also so quiet. It's like a weird emotional place to be in. And I mean, it's your baby's birth. So who wants to stand in that place during birth?
Right.
So really emergent situations, see if there's a person who can be like your person who's truly like at your side all the way into the OR or through whatever. And then if it's a little less emergent, then what are the things that you can still control or ask about, like music or conversation or lighting or take back a little bit of power, even in some of those, smaller things.
Right. So I think I did it mostly right. I ended up having a friend, which I'd never had a friend at our delivery before, but I think we knew this one was going to be a little bit different, a lot different actually. We just didn't know how crazy it was going to be. But she ended up being there and she had given birth she'd had four previous C-sections. So had I not had her, she ended up being my point person, even though my husband was amazing, but she was the person that was like, Catherine, you can do this, it's all gonna be okay. I'm gonna be right here. And then after they wheeled me out, my husband said, "Oh, she gave me the rundown of exactly what I needed to do." So I was really grateful that I had her there, and it wasn't because I was smart. I think it was just a providential thing that she ended up being there, but I think the point person is an excellent piece of advice. So, Lo, if there's a mom who is laboring, in whatever way it may be, um, I guess if you could give her one piece of advice as she labors, what would your best advice be to her?
We're going to go full circle really quickly and go back to trusting yourself, which is really hard to do around care providers who, in theory, know more than you. But you know your body and you know it better than anyone else in the room. So just really feeling comfortable speaking up. And maybe they'll say, oh, that's normal, or oh, like that's expected at this point. But just feeling absolute freedom to say, hey, I'm feeling this. Hey, I'm scared about this. Hey, this makes me uncomfortable. Hey, I'd like more time to make a decision. So really just kind of elevating your own intuitions and needs back up to the level that they really should be at is like my first piece of advice. And then if I'm with someone in that moment, or if I'm a nurse or a friend or a supporter, like I really love the idea of you have already done so much. And I think that that can be true even for someone walking into like a planned cesarean. You've spent 9.5 months growing a child, making sacrifices, dealing with Braxton Hicks, going to appointments, whatever it is, many other things that are even more unpleasant. So just that mentality of sometimes we're forward thinkers in labor, like, oh, I'm only 5 centimeters dilated, or, oh, I still have this long to go. And I prefer to flip it the other way and say, look how far you've come, and just try to give a mom or a patient that encouragement instead of there's so much more to be done. So if you're in labor and you have the ability to even like care for yourself and think about yourself that way, that is the advice that I would give you, is try to look at what has happened already or what's been achieved versus what you're still looking forward to.
That's really, really good advice. There's a reason why I
Good
had
for
you
your
on here.
NICU. Also
Yes.
good advice for your NICU baby. Look
Yes.
backwards and
That's
say,
good.
oh, look what happened today. It wasn't happening yesterday, because that can be a really long time. But tiny milestones are worth celebrating. And it's true in labor and pregnancy too.
I think tiny milestones often feel like the biggest milestones. So, Lo, thank you for your good advice. It was outstanding. Wasn't that so good? I know, man. I could have visited with Lo for a really long time. There was this quote on her website. It's from Barbara Katz Rothman, and I think it's worth saying. It says, birth is not only about making babies, birth is about making mothers, strong, competent, capable mothers who trust themselves and know their inner strength. That seems so applicable to every NICU mom that I know. And there were a lot of things in today's 2-minute take that I want to reflect upon, but I think this may have been one of the things that she said that I listened to and thought, man, she really articulated that so well. And it was that your birth plan it's not a menu. It's not, I'm going to check all these boxes and hand it to my doctor and my L&D nurse, and then this is what I'm going to get back. And instead, it's about why. Why do you want those? Looking at the things that matter to you most, and then communicating that to your nurse and to your doctor and to the entire medical staff as to why does this matter to you. I'll give you an example. When I was pregnant with our 6th baby, so this is my baby following our NICU baby, it was really important for me not to deliver in a hospital gown. Had a really traumatic C-section with our 5th baby, and there were just a lot of triggers. And I remember looking at the nurse and I said, I just want to deliver in my own clothes with my fancy earrings on. And she looked at me and she said, I think we can make that happen. And while there were many of the things that were out of my control, that I could control. And it felt so good for them to know why. I felt like it was important. I wasn't being, a stinker. I just really desired to have a little bit of control in a situation that we really had hoped would be really healing, and it was. So I hope that you took so many great things from my conversation with Flo. She's got some great resources, some great courses on her website, which is thelabormama.com. But just remember what she said is that your intuition matters, and that sharing that and understanding why, that evidence, that intuition, and that grace, I think, can take us all a long way in our births. So with that, I will see y'all next time. Thanks, y'all, for listening to NICU Babies Parent Support. Every parent and every experience is welcome here. If you are a NICU parent and you're finding yourself in need of support, please download our app. You can find it in the Apple Store or on Google Play, Hand to Hold. And if you love today's episode, you can share it, you can subscribe, and you can most certainly review it. We would love, love, love your reviews. It's how we reach more NICU parents. Thanks, and I'll see y'all next time.